I'm dragging behind him. So he's dragging me. So I got a wounded gator on a rope attached to my bow, of which I can't get my hand out of, and it's dragging me to the water. And the guide takes off running after me. And he actually ran all the way up and pulled on the line, got my arm released, and then he ran with my bow all the way out to his thighs before he snapped the end of that stabilizer piece off and broke it to get it off of my bow. And I'm laying there like, what the?
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 242. Joni Marie, Bucket Lists and Heavy Arrows. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from Hunter's Blend Coffee. Awaken your hunt with coffee purchased directly from farmers around the world, creating jobs and alleviating poverty. Hunter's Blend Coffee, we're hunters too. Polar Works Coolers and the Chill Zone, specializing in the most durable, reliable thermal cups and coolers. Keep your drinks hot or cold in any element. Black Ash Outdoor Products reduce your risk of tree stand suspension trauma with a Tree Stand Wingman, the Tree Stand Emergency Descender System. The Enforcer, take control of your odor footprint with your personal ozone generator. Covert Scouting Cameras, remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. The Horny Buck Seed Company, it's all about the freshest seed. Morse's Sporting Goods, a full line of sporting goods without the sales tax. And Big Buck Merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, and hoodies. And show support for this podcast by visiting www.bigbuckregistry.com/MERCH. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
This is Jeff Trainer from LiveFreeAndTrap.com. You're about to listen to my favorite podcast, the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
I'm Chrissy Titus. I'm co-host of RNES Female Television Show and NRA I Am Forever. Gear up for another amazing episode with Jay and Dusty on the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hi, this is Sean Asada at IowaLandman.com. You are listening to my favorite podcast, the Big Buck Registry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay. Thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to this week's show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Play. It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we have an ample supply of harnesses to give away from our volunteer donors. If you're in need of a full-body harness, please send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com. So let's say that one day you were told you only had 2 years left to live. What would your plan be? Amongst your other desires, my guess is that you would probably put a plan together that would fulfill many of the hunts you always wanted to do. The proverbial bucket list would quickly swing into full effect. Turns out this is exactly what happened to Joni Marie, a native Alaskan who enjoys all the fertile terrain that Alaska has to offer as much as anyone. So away Joni went on her bucket list hunts, only to find out later, after more evaluation and testing, that her life expectancy was longer than 2 years due to medical advancements for her particular form of a rare autoimmune disease. Today, Joni is still fighting a daily battle against the elements, as her condition can often turn her hands paper white when exposed to cold temperatures. But make no mistake, Joni is far, far from wrapping up her hunting lifestyle. We'll get to our entire interview with Joni Marie in just one moment, but before we do, let's turn to Jim Keller for the Deer News.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week. Australian big game hunter resigns from VP position at private club after backlash over trophy photos. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Michelle Gant. An Australian businessman and big game hunter has resigned from his role as vice president of a private club after facing backlash for posing with the bodies of animals he shot on safari. The controversial photos and videos surfaced online showing Nick Hridamos, the former exec of Hellenic Club, with several of his kills, including a bull elephant and a baboon he dressed up in sunglasses and a hat. The images were reportedly taken sometime between 2010 and 2006 on a number of trips to Africa and were posted to a public photo bucket account by the user NickHa1. They were also shared on Twitter and in an online forum where hunters report their kills, according to the Canberra Times. Hridamos did not deny posting the material, and his lawyer told the Times that all hunting trips were legal. This is a regulated activity which is undertaken in accordance with licenses and quotas issued by the relevant country and is conducted in a manner that does not pose a threat to an endangered species, the lawyer stated. The photos sparked major backlash online, especially among animal rights activists who called the photos appalling. People on social media began calling for a boycott of the Hellenic Club, calling for Hridamos to be removed from the board of the directors. On February 28th, the club posted a statement to Facebook saying Hridamos had resigned. While many were happy to see Hridamos go, a few others commented that despite people's personal feelings over his choice of recreational activities, Hridamos shouldn't be fired for participating in the legal activities. Retailer forced to pull hunting-themed children's costumes from shelves after backlash from parents. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Alexandra Diebler. A major British supermarket and retailer has pulled a hunting-themed children's costume from shelves after receiving a series of complaints from parents. Tesco was slammed on social media over a Red Fox hunter jacket aimed at children aged 7 and 9 by parents, claiming it was encouraging children to take up a highly cruel animal blood sport, the Independent reported. The controversial costume, described as a long-sleeved red tailcoat-style jacket with a single black button at the front, was modeled after traditional fox hunting attire, a sport that has been banned in England since 2005. Parents were quick to call out Tesco for the outfit once it appeared online, saying they were appalled by the costume. Some were in favor of the costume, with one even taking a good-natured jab at the controversy, tweeting, "I'm not in favor of fox hunting, but shouldn't we be more concerned that Tesco is promoting pirates, well known for their plundering, raping, and murder?" The store quickly responded to the backlash by removing the costume from its online store. "We've listened to our customers and have immediately removed this product from sale," a spokesperson told The Independent. Fox hunting as a sport dates back to the 16th century in England, but was banned in England and Wales in 2005 by the Hunting Act. It is still legal in other countries around the world, including the United States. Get ready for the world's largest shed hunt. This story is from the Deer and Deer Hunting website and was reported by Chris Behrens. This weekend, March 10th and 11th, you can join the world's largest shed hunt during Shed Rally 2018. Organized by Whitetail Properties, the 4th annual weekend event encourages folks to get out and hunt for some shed antlers, to simply enjoy the outdoors as spring approaches, and hopefully introduce a newcomer to what deer hunting is all about. It will be a chance to stretch the legs after a long winter and take in some fresh air, to scout deer hunting land before the new green growth of summer hides last season's deer sign, and with a vigilant eye and some luck to pick up some antlers dropped by a whitetail buck. Plus, you can win prizes by sharing photos of your shed hunting adventures and using the hashtag ShedRally on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter during the 2-day event. The staff at Whitetail Properties will judge the photos and choose the prize winners at the close of the weekend, so do your best to get creative and have fun with it all. For more information, be sure to find all of the shed hunting tips on Deer and Deer Hunting's website and on their YouTube page. For any of our Michigan listeners, I will be at the Ultimate Sports Show at DeVos Place in Grand Rapids on Friday, March 16th. As usual, I will be wearing a Big Buck Registry hoodie, so if you see me, please stop and say hi. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. Special thanks to Daniel Applebaum for leads on some of this week's stories. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Well, thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Joni Marie. Joni Marie, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you?
I'm good.
Excellent. Where are you at right now?
I'm in Alaska.
Alaska. Nice. Is it snowing?
Not currently, but it has been a lot lately.
Well, I'm glad you're joining us in the studios, virtual studios, of course. We've followed a little bit of your story, and I thought we should dive deep and learn a little bit more about you so the world can know who you are, too. And you have a pretty interesting story. First and foremost, I know you're an excellent hunter and a killer at heart, which is exactly what we like. So tell us about yourself. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? How'd you end up in Alaska?
So I was actually born and raised here. So my parents actually moved here before it was even a state. So they've been longtime Alaskans.
Wow,
and,
no kidding.
Yeah. And I'm the baby of the family. So I have a lot of older brothers and sisters. And my parents are older than probably most folks' parents are at my age. So my parents have been up here for a long, long time. And I was born and raised in Alaska, very typical, true Alaskan upbringing with a father that was a hunting guide, and our family ran a commercial fishing operation in the summers.
Okay,
and
all right.
True Alaskan.
It sounds true Alaska. That's what I've seen on television, and I don't know a lot of people that grew up in Alaska, but yeah, that's what I kind of envisioned. Somebody, a hunting guide, and making a living off the land and the sea. That's kind of makes sense. Yeah, gotcha. So, what did you have to do as a kid, being around all that stuff?
It seemed pretty normal to me. I definitely got to do some really neat things. My father was an amazing bush pilot, so I got to fly to a lot of really, remote areas of the state that a lot of people don't get to do. So that was really cool. He had, Super Cubs on skis and wheels and floats, so we were landing on lakes and glaciers and, all kinds of neat things like that. And then in the summers, I worked on our commercial fish site, which was in Kenai, Alaska, which was a different city than what I live in. But and then in the winters, I was in the big city, going to school. So.
Gotcha. That's a heck of a childhood.
Yeah.
far from video games and popcorn these days, right? I mean, that's some pretty hardcore stuff. You're involved. You're getting into the lifestyle right away because that's your livelihood of your family.
Yeah, and it seemed normal to me.
Right, and it would. I mean, kids know normal based off of what they grew up with, and that to you is normal. So, yeah, interesting. When did you realize that might be a little bit different than the rest of the world?
I mean, I was gone. Like I said, I would go down and commercial fish with my family every summer, all the way from when I was born all the way through college. I was down there, and the whole family was expected to work, and it was a all summer long job. There were no days off. And I think that didn't really register with me until like junior high school, when my friends were having these fun summers off and relaxing, and I was working every day down there, and I was in a different city. Right. We didn't have a TV. We didn't communicate with anybody while we were down there. And I sort of realized, this is a little different than what everybody else is doing.
Gotcha. But it didn't stop you, right? I mean,
I loved it.
You loved it, and you still love it.
I was out on the water, you're getting muddy, you're out on the water, in your boat, you're working with your family. I mean, very few people get to spend that kind of quality time with their family, really, truly. And so our family was very close knit because of that. I have several brothers and sisters, and, they got married, and then their children came and worked. So it was there's a huge family component to that, and it was awesome.
Gotcha. Very cool. What's your earliest recollection of a hunting experience?
Probably bird hunting with my dad at his lodge. Like I would take some of my little friends in elementary school and stuff, and he would fly us down to his lodge, which was a long ways away. It was out on the Alaska Peninsula. So very long flight, down there. And then we would stay down there and have our little snowsuits on and go out, and he would run out and lean over, and he would have us put our guns across his back, and we would shoot off of his back for ptarmigan.
Ptarmigan, cool. Okay. So you're hunting ptarmigan, shooting off your dad's back.
Yeah.
All right. Boy, times are different, huh?
Yeah.
That's excellent. Very cool. So you grew up hunting and fishing and really exposed to the entire outdoor lifestyle in Alaska. Where did hunting take you? Like, how do you view hunting these days? What's your philosophy? What should it be to somebody?
Oh gosh, I think that the hunting industry is interesting. I've been through all different facets of it. So I've been, the daughter of a hunting guide here. I've owned a hunting store here for many years that I started from the ground up. Now I own a clothing brand that's national, but it's more lifestyle wear. I've been involved in both the media side and the other side of hunting, and I do get a little frustrated sometimes with some of the social media aspects of the direction that hunting's gone. I think sometimes the true meaning behind hunting, or what I think it should be, what it should be for you. You should be hunting for yourself, and there's nothing wrong with sharing that with the world and sharing your photos and getting out your story. But if you're only doing it to create an image, or to have photos, or to get sponsors, or those kinds of things, then I feel like people are doing it for the wrong reasons. It should be to have healthy, organic, wild meat. You should believe in conservation. You should be involved in your local, communities or national communities for conservation. And I definitely have some strong opinions on those sorts of things. And sometimes I feel like that gets lost a bit today with some of the glamorization of hunting. But there's nothing wrong with sharing pictures. I love sharing my hunting pictures. I mean, what hunter doesn't want to share their picture and their story and connect with other hunters? I think everybody loves that, but sometimes it gets taken a little too far, in my opinion.
Right. I'd like to take a picture of an animal that I might have killed, and it's more of a memory for me, so I can remember the moment. And you share it with your friends, but it's not a bragging rights thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think it should be. I think it's just a memory capture.
I'm not overly, I wouldn't say I'm not a trophy hunter, because I don't have anything. I have nothing against someone being a trophy hunter. I don't have any judgment on anyone, however they want to hunt. I don't like when hunters bash on each other for how they choose to hunt. And if I went moose hunting and I got a gigantic moose, I'd be super stoked, and I would show everybody that photo.
Absolutely.
But when I got my moose tag and I went moose hunting, I got a pretty small moose. Now, small, I'm talking about antlers, because moose are huge, right, and there's a lot of meat on him. And he was young and tender, and he was excellent eating. And that meat fed my family. It fed my parents, and we picked some families on the military base that were in need of help, and they got some of the moose meat as well. And then I had all these people say, why would you shoot a small moose? That's, why would you take a picture of a small moose you shot? Well, I did it on a DIY hunt with my bow, so why wouldn't I take a picture? I was super proud of it. Right. So that trophy aspect, I don't, if it's a huge trophy, that's awesome. But if it's not, it's still awesome. Like I don't, that part of the social media thing, that's kind of what I mean, that part I don't like. I don't like when people bag on each other for however they've hunted or what they've chosen to hunt. The hunt is for you. Sharing it is part of it, but you're hunting for yourself.
You think we've lost perspective of what it really is based off of the life of social media?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's too bad. And maybe it'll turn around. I mean, I think a lot of people are starting to be more vocal about feeling that way about it. So that tide may change too.
Right. Gotcha. You've had some challenges. You love hunting. You've been involved in it your whole life. You seem to have lots of success, but you've had some medical issues that have come up.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're dealing with?
Yeah. So I'll backtrack a little and just say, like, in years ago, my husband and I were both working 2 jobs, and we ended up, we decided we wanted to open an archery store here, and we really went all in on that thing, and it was, we started small and we grew it to the largest archery store in the state, and we put a ton of time and energy into that. I was there 100 hours a week, like running a children's homeschool in the morning for archery, then opening the store and running the store all day long. And then at night after we closed, we'd run youth leagues and adult leagues, and we were running lessons out of there. And on the days that we were technically closed, I was running seminars in there. I mean, we were there all the time, and we were working so much that you just didn't really have time for anything else. And I started noticing initially just that my breathing was getting weird, that I was just panting more doing certain activities and stuff. And I literally just thought, man, I'm just working so much, I'm getting out of shape or something. I didn't really realize what it was. And then, at night when I was driving home, I would notice that my hands would turn white, just like a dead person's hands, like white, like no blood in them at all. And it would become really painful. And it was cold in my car because my car I'd been at the store for 14 hours. So my car was cold, and I was just blaming it on holding onto the cold steering wheel. And so slowly these little symptoms started happening. I blacked out a couple times. I ended up in the ER, couldn't breathe. I wasn't getting enough oxygen, and we really didn't know what was going on. And then I got they did some blood tests on me. They sent me to a neurologist, and honestly, I'll never forget the day that I got my diagnosis, because I was just so busy, and I just felt like, there's something minor wrong. Pop me a pill, send me back to work.
Right.
I just thought, there's nothing to this.
Just give me the medicine, right?
Yeah, what do I need? Some antibiotics or something? Like, give me those so I can get back to work and do my job. And Dave was actually overrunning the store, and I had a friend come in and cover for me, at the store. And our store was big. I mean, it was a 6,000 square foot place, huge indoor range, all the brands. We were a big store. I didn't want to be away from there, so I'm sitting there kind of tapping my foot, being like, come on, let's get this done, and the guy starts in, you've got this rare disease, and this is very serious, and you're the fastest progressing case I've ever seen in my life, and I've only seen 3 cases in my life. And I just remember the room got super, super blurry, and he was talking, but it was almost like you could hear someone underwater talking. It was the weirdest feeling, because what he was saying didn't go with what I thought I was going to hear. And my brain I just couldn't deal with it.
Right.
I just
shielded it, deflected it, like you didn't want to hear it. And then I remember him grabbing my shoulder and kind of shaking me, and he goes, "Are you even listening to what I'm saying?" And I kind of snapped back, and he said, "Are you taking this seriously? I'm telling you, you got 2 years left." And I'm looking at him like, the frick are you talking about? like what? I just couldn't even process it. And he's trying to go through stuff, and you've got to go get this test, and you've got to go get this test, and it's likely that your lung, most people that have this illness generally either they end up in a hospital bed, they can't breathe and their lungs collapse, or you're going to go into renal failure in your kidneys. And everything's going through my mind. Dave and I had sunk everything we had into opening that archery store. Right. I mean, and we're the ones running it. He can't run it without me. We're there a zillion hours a week, and I'm just thinking my life is just collapsing around me, just completely collapsing. And, I didn't cry, nothing. I was just in shock. And I remember going all the way out. I got in my car and just went like hysterical bawling. And then Dave was at the store, so I was afraid to call him. I didn't want to call my mom because I didn't know how to tell her that. So I called my best friend, and she later said if there wasn't such a thing as caller ID, she would have had no idea who was on the phone. Because I was like, when you cry and you can't even catch your breath, I'm like thinking, and I'm saying, they told me I'm not gonna live, I'm just like panicking. And she's like, where are you? Don't drive your car right now. I'm coming to get you. It was just, and then in the coming weeks after that, I still had to go back and work 100 hours a week and smile at people and help them pick out their bows and teach them how to shoot and, all those things. And Dave and I've got that, in the back of our minds. I was totally devastated. I told my mom over the phone, and then I would go to her house. My father had Alzheimer's at the time, and he was very, very ill. And my mother was caretaking for him at home. And I felt so guilty placing an additional burden on her. I mean, she had so much burden to carry.
And the first 3 times I tried to look her in the face, I went to her house, I rang the doorbell, she opened the door, I looked at her, I started crying and said, I can't, and turned around and left. And I felt so bad, but I just couldn't even look at her because I felt like I was just burdening her with something more. And things just spiraled worse. I started losing more of my lung capacity. I started having issues with my esophagus. So the disease, it's an autoimmune disease, and it's a form of scleroderma. There's multiple forms of scleroderma. This one is called CREST, and CREST attacks 5 major organs. So it attacks your lungs, your kidneys, your esophagus, your circulation, and your heart. And so they were doing all these tests, monitoring my decline, and my circulation just spiraled worse and worse, and my lungs were really the things that were worst at that time. And I was fighting to get into the Mayo Clinic in Arizona because they have a specialist there that just studies this disease, and no one up here in Alaska knew what to do with me. I was getting incorrect information. I was having to go to a separate lung doctor, a separate heart doctor, a separate circulation doctor, and each one wasn't communicating with each other, and I just wanted a team.
Okay.
And we just fought and fought and fought to get me into the Mayo Clinic to get treatment. And in the meantime of all this, we decided we've got to sell our archery store, because if I've only got maybe 2 years left to live, and we're over there working 100 hours a week, my husband and I thought, we're going to make bucket lists, and we're going to go out and we're going to hunt our asses off. We're going to spend as much time as we can together. We're going to do everything that we ever wanted to do, because this is all we have. This is the only time we have left together, you know?
Right.
And so we're going to just go for it, balls to the walls. We're just going to go do all the things we always wanted to do. So we got very, very lucky and chatted with some friends who wanted to buy our archery store, and, went through that process of selling it. Yeah. And then I finally got into the Mayo Clinic and got down there and went through all this testing. And then the doctor there says, you're not going to die in 2 years. At this point, it had already been a year. So you're not going to die in a year. He said, that is old, antiquated information. There is so much that we've learned about this disease. There's so much that we're doing, so much experimentation. We can put stem cells into your lungs. We can regrow tissue. There are things that we can do, for your kidneys. And he said, that's not going to happen. They had me on the wrong medication up here, which was making me sicker. I went down there, they got that corrected. And so all of a sudden I'm like, holy crap, we just sold this archery store that was our baby. We worked our asses off to build this thing for 7 years from nothing. So this biggest store in the state, it was everything to us. And we just sold it because this guy up here in Alaska told me I had 2 years to live.
Right.
But So the whole thing was like, it was just devastating. But, they said, it's not that we can't stop it. It's not stoppable, and it's not curable. So you are going to continue to get worse. And everything you lose, you can't get back. So at this point, for example, I've lost 28% of my lung capacity. I'm not getting that back. Right. All I can do is hope to plateau or remission, but I can't get back what I've lost. And so I still believe that it was God's plan, and I still believe that it was for the best that we sold it, because it's allowed me to regularly go and get treatment, to really, really focus on my health, which has slowed the disease down some for me, which has been huge. It's allowed Dave and I to spend some amazing time together, and allowed me, that year I went and killed 11 animals with my bow.
Right.
I went a little all out, because I just thought, I don't know what my lungs are going to be like. Am I going to be able to hike up this mountain or not? I better get it done right now. So I just went, kind of all out on that. And so I think, it's affected how I hunt, but I'm not letting it stop me. And I don't think that modern medicine takes into account the perseverance of the person, the determination of your heart, your inner strength, and your faith in God, because there is some serious power behind prayer. And I believe that 100%. And so I don't think that they were prepared for how determined I am. Right. Because it's not slowing me down, and it's not taking my life. So I've just sort of decided that it's not going to kick my ass, basically. Gotcha. And I'm not letting it.
Wow. So for a brief moment in time, Operation Bucket List was full speed ahead.
Yes.
And then it came to a screeching slowdown because you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, we're like, oh, okay, well, we have more time. There are certainly, there's some hunts that I just can't do anymore, physically, and because the circulation stuff has gotten so incredibly bad. I've lost feeling in several of my fingers, and this disease does go in a direction where you end up losing fingers, losing toes. It's very, very common for your hands and feet to ulcerate because I lose circulation constantly. It only takes a second for me to have a very bad episode, or I have issues with choking and issues with my kidneys and things, and so I have had to change the way that I hunt. And so I'm glad that I knocked out some bucket list, type of hunts that I wanted to do early on before I had progressed even to the point that I'm at now.
Gotcha. Where has it affected your hunting the most? Have you had any experiences in the field where you're like, whoa, that was a close one?
Yeah. So it's affected me in a couple ways, and I would say the biggest one is the circulation issue, and I'm really stubborn. Part of it is because I have that mindset where I don't want the disease to kick my ass. So I feel like I have a hard time saying, no, I can't do something.
Mm-hmm.
So I end up putting myself in bad situations where it can become dangerous for me. And I need to work on that basically. But just for example, things that wouldn't be dangerous for someone else. So just this past year, HHA is a company that I staff for. They're a site company, and the guys the people that own it are absolutely amazing, like amazing people, so kind-hearted. And their staff coordinator, Paul, knew about my disease, and he's just an amazing guy. And he had a hunt lined up for whitetail in November that he was doing. And he ended up giving me that hunt because he knew that I've never shot a whitetail, which everybody thinks is insane. So I've shot 24 animals with my bow. I've shot brown bear, black bear, moose, goat, whatever, but I've never gotten a deer hunt. One, because I'm from Alaska, so
right. Yeah, no,
we don't have any whitetail running around here.
Right.
So he's like, what? You never shot a whitetail? And, you're doing this bucket list. You have to shoot a deer, So he ends up putting me in his spot for this hunt. And I started kind of looking into it, and I'm like, that's November in Wisconsin. That's like really cold, really cold. And I have gotten to the point, you say, you live in Alaska, but no, we're getting ready to move to Arizona because of my disease. One, I need to be closer to better medical care, but two, I'm losing the ability to go outdoors because of these circulation issues. And for a person that loves the outdoors, it's like torture. It's really awful for me. And so going to Wisconsin on a deer hunt in November was brutal. Ahead of time, I told the guide, I have these circulation issues and you're really going to have to work with me. It's going to be very difficult for me to be out in a blind and these things. And I think not knowing me, they thought, it's a chick that gets cold easy, like, she's a whiner. She's a chick that gets cold easy. And then, I roll up in there and tell them a little bit about myself. And they literally see when I step outside, my hand goes from red to like a whitish green and becomes painful. And they had me out one night and my toe went so white that it ended up going black. It turned totally black, and I could barely walk. And they sort of saw in those first couple of days, like, this ain't no joke. Like, she isn't just some chick that gets cold easy. I was wearing full prowess, everything, thick jacket, vest. I had hand warmers stuck in every nook and cranny, hats, you name it. I had a heater bodysuit over top of all of my gear, sitting inside of that, and was still losing full circulation where my feet were going black and where my hands were going out. Yeah. So then they sort of went, oh, you have like major health problems. And I'm like, yeah, like, this is not a joke.
Right.
Like, I should not physically be out here. And the worst part was breathing that cold air. My lungs would go into vasospasms. So the pain, I would come back to camp and my lung, I just felt like someone was sitting on my chest, and all night long I couldn't sleep. I'm coughing, I'm hacking, and my lungs, the pressure in my chest was so bad. And I called my husband like 3-4 days into it, and he's like, you don't have to go out again. Like, you can just be done. Like, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. What are you doing? You know, I'm like, no, I have to go back out. You know, it's just stupid. After it was over, I dealt with major health issues for weeks afterwards. I mean, I got severely, severely ill. And I thought, okay, maybe there's some things I can't do anymore. That's hard for me. Like, I don't want people to think I'm a pussy, and I don't want to think I'm a pussy. I was raised by a guy that was a hard hunter, and I want to be someone that hunts hard. So that stuff has been a real challenge for me to admit to myself.
Right.
And is going to continue to affect, the way that I hunt and the choices that I make. And sometimes I'm just going to have to say no.
Right. Gotcha. So. I want to turn the mic over to Dusty here for a little while, because I'm curious to find out, like, some of the techniques and strategies that you're using when you're going on these hunts, and how do you see these strategies and techniques changing in the future as you continue to deal with some of the challenges that you're facing with your autoimmune disease, that you have to wake up every day and say, hey, I'm going to go hunt, because you've got you have that hunter inside of you. It's like, I'm going to go hunting, and then you've got this thing you got to deal with. It's hitting you in the face. What am I going to do? How am I going to change my strategies and techniques to A, be successful in the field, but B, don't end up in the hospital like you did in Wisconsin because it's cold out.
Yeah.
It's going to make for a super interesting chat here, because things are different in your world, Johnny, that most people take for granted, that they can handle the cold better. I'll start out. Do you carry a backpack in the field?
Yeah, I do, always.
Let's pretend like we've got this thing in our hands and we're going to crack the zipper on it and start pulling out everything. Let's hear what's in your backpack.
I've got probably different stuff than, obviously all your basic stuff like your rangefinder and your, water and all that kind of stuff. But I carry, whether I'm doing a spot and stalk hunt or I'm in a blind or in a tree stand or whatever, I've probably got at least a minimum of 10 packages of hand warmers in there, and not like the little ones, like the big body warmers, because I'm opening them, shaking them up, and I have 3 to 4 activated on my core at all times, because part of the way that my circulation shuts down is if my core catches a little breeze, my body goes into almost like if you were out in the wild and your body wanted to pull energy or blood into your core to save your core, and it would pull it out of your limbs. That's basically what my body does, but from a breeze, just from a little bit, it starts pulling from my hands, from my feet, from my face. And so I try to keep my core warm all the time. So I'm running around even when it's 50 degrees out. I've got a whole bunch of hand warmers in there. I've started to have I have to have a mitt around my hand to try to retain the heat on my bow hand. So that's something unusual. Again, even when you would think it might be warm, my break point's 55 degrees. So anything under 55, I start to have episodes. So I suppose that's something different that most people don't have in their backpack as well.
What else is in there? Dig deeper.
Inhalers. Inhalers are in there for breathing issues, steroids for my lungs, and then all your basic hunter stuff. Everything else is, all the stuff that you would normally carry, like as a bow hunter. Sometimes I have a backup release depending on how far I'm away from camp or what I'm doing, and some first aid supplies and some snacks, and I don't know.
So do you got
all
like
that kind of stuff? Layers, lots of layers, because I'm putting on or taking off layers constantly.
So has this thing got a motor or anything to haul it around for you?
It's heavy.
Yeah, it sounds super interesting. It's amazing how somebody can adapt to what they got going on in their life, and it sounds like your backpack definitely will be very beneficial in your conditions. Let's get into with a circulation issue. I want to know what kind of camouflage that you found that actually works and keeps you warm.
It's hard. I experiment a lot with it. I always have merino wool closest to my skin, almost in unless I'm in really hot weather or something. But almost in anything, I'm wearing merino wool, close to my skin for sure. And then I just lots of layers. I don't ever rely on just, one jacket or one layer of clothing. I have multiple layers in there. And like I said about my core, I'm always concerned about keeping my core warm. So I've always got vests, sometimes 2 layers of vests. I own a heated vest. So, I have equipment like that where it's got wires that run through it. It actually has a battery pack on it. Sometimes I might layer that in and not have it on, but have it for emergencies. If something happened and I, couldn't get back to camp or whatever, then I could activate that for an emergency situation. Because if I lost circulation, when I lose circulation for long periods of time, it damages my hands, and that's why like I had an incident on a Idaho bear hunt, and I lost feeling permanently in a couple of my fingers, and so I've learned from different hunt experiences about layering like that. Press has some really awesome layers for ladies that actually fit, so you're not you want a bunch of layers on, you want to be warm, but you still need to be able to hike and draw your bow back and not have it be super bulky and stuff. So and then I live in Kenetrek boots. They're my favorites, and I just get the ones with the heaviest thinsulate, and then I put layers of foot warmers and things down in them, and sometimes I've got hand warmers tucked in around my ankles as well to kind of keep that heat going down in there.
That's amazing. That it must take you some time to get yourself prepped to go out. I mean, that's
it does.
When you talk about layers, I want to dig into that a little bit more, just because it's something that it's kind of opportunity here for us to talk about, because you've got to stay warm. There's no way around it. You've got to stay warm. You say you go wool to the skin. What do you top the wool with next? And kind of run us through that and break that down.
It depends where I'm hunting at and what kind of hunt I'm doing, and whether I'm going to be. I mean, if I'm going to be like in a tree stand or something, like, we had a bear camp and we were doing black bear baits and stuff here for a while. And even when it's 40, 50, 50 degrees, you'd think, oh, that's fine. If I'm going to be sitting and not moving around, then I'm putting on a ton of layers. So, with merino wool, then I've got another, maybe fleece style layer over that. And then I've got either, a vest under and then a vest over that layer as well. And then I might have 1 to 2 jackets on. Like I might have a regular down, like a 700 fill down jacket, and then a rain gear layer, a packable rain gear layer over that if it's raining or something. I look like a big friggin' marshmallow, but I'm definitely not one of those chicks that cares what I look like in the field. So if mismatched camo, whatever works is what I'm wearing. I don't care what I look like. So,
right.
I have some funny pictures. I took like a selfie in the blind and sent it to my friend when I was in Wisconsin, and I had 2 layers of face masks on. So I had like a Realtree, face mask. And then I had that big fuzzy Sitka face mask, like their most dense one. I had that over it. And I had hand warmers stuffed in my cheeks because I was having a lot of issues of losing circulation in my face. And my eyes were swelling. So sometimes when I lose a lot of circulation in my face, my eyes will swell up. And so I had hand warmers stuck in on the sides of my cheeks in between the 2 layers of face mask. And I used foot warmers because they have sticky backs, and I actually had stuck them to my face on either side. So I just get creative.
I'm trying to envision all this.
Well, it's not pretty. It's a good thing I'm not one of those people that has a camera following me around, because people be laughing, but I still get it done.
as you get older, you say it's not about how you look, it's how you feel, and you gotta stay warm.
Right. That's right.
We understand.
And if you can't stay warm and you can't stay out there, then you can't finish your hunt. So
right.
So you do what you got to do.
Just curious, does your everyday activities at home, and let's say you're going up to the grocery, do you have to prep yourself a little bit different than most?
Yep, I do. So it's not uncommon for me to have, like, I use hand warmers every single day. I buy them by the case. So I if you, went out to dinner with me and I was going to drive over there and meet you in Alaska, I'd have activated hand warmers in my pockets. You wouldn't know it, but I'd have them there. And
Right.
even throughout the dinner, I might, if we're sitting close to the door and someone keeps swinging the door open and a breeze is catching me, I might feel myself start to have an episode and grab a hold of one in my pocket. So yeah, just going to the grocery store, I'm affected. And it's truly made me feel like a bit of a shut-in. There are things, day-to-day things that I feel like I have started to avoid doing with my life here in Alaska now. In this last year, it's gotten bad enough where, I own an online clothing company. We have a lot of orders online. If orders need to be run to the post office, a lot of times my husband's doing that because I don't want to go through the process of suiting up and doing hand warmers and getting layers and preheating the car and, to go over and just go to the post office. So he's taking care of a lot of those kinds of things. And it's really, it affects you. If I want to go out to dinner with a girlfriend and it's 20 degrees out, well, if I drive downtown and I park and I go into a restaurant, when I come out, my car is freezing cold. I have to walk in the cold to get there. Now I'm going to have episodes when I go out. I'm going to have vasospasms in my lungs. My lungs are going to ache. My hands are going to go out. That's painful. You end up avoiding some of those scenarios just because of the pain factor on it. And that it makes me mad at myself that I allow the disease to do that. But that's also part of the reason why we are going to make this move to Arizona, which is crazy for a girl that's born and raised in Alaska to move to Arizona. Sometimes I think I am nuts, but we're going to go for a whole other extreme. And I think that my quality of life is going to be a lot better because I'll be able to go out and shoot my bow in the yard a lot more than I can at this point in this disease. I just, I don't want it to affect, my outdoor lifestyle.
Yeah, that completely makes sense, and I wanted to dig into a little bit there, and I'm glad you talked us through that. And it just makes sense that you're making the move. Obviously, Alaska is beautiful and most wonderful place in the world. It sounds like, but with your condition, it totally makes sense. So once you get to Alaska, you talk about shooting your bow. What kind of bow do you shoot?
So I have several different expedition bows. I have an SS Explorer and I have an eccentric 6. I actually have 2 eccentric 6. I have a lot of bows. I have a bunch of recurves and I like striker long bows. So I have a couple of striker long bows and then I have some of my father's old recurves too. So I kind of change it up back and forth. But for a compound, I've shot the most animals most recently with the eccentric 6. And I like that bow a lot because I'm pretty short. I'm only 5'3". Something happened with my disease. I was trying to get my circulation back one time and I actually ripped my rotator cuff on my right shoulder, but it's a partial tear. And so I haven't been able to actually get it fixed because it didn't tear all the way through. And so I can't pull as much weight as I used to. I just go and I get injections into it to kind of keep me going. Like if I'm going on a hunt or whatever, I'll get a steroid injection in my shoulder, but I'm only pulling like 52 to 54 pounds, which is, it's decent. That's a normal amount of weight for a lady, but with a short draw and then not that much poundage for the kind of hunting that I want to do for big game, I need, that extra energy. And so that eccentric 6, the reason that I picked that bow is it's a really fast bow. And so I was able to get more speed out of that and therefore, a little more punching power, even with only a 25-inch draw.
Gotcha. Any particular arrow you like to use?
I like a full metal. Well, it depends what I'm hunting, but I would say 99% of the time I'm shooting a full metal jacket. I know a lot of people are firm believers in, light arrows and all that, but I'm not one of those people. I like a heavy arrow. I like to punch really hard and punch all the way through. So I'll shoot a heavy arrow all day. And if that means that I got to get a little bit closer, I got to stalk in a little bit more, my effective yardage is shorter because it's heavy, then that's fine. But I'm a firm believer in a heavy arrow.
With that heavy arrow comes a heavy broadhead. What kind of broadhead do you prefer?
So I'm like insanely crazy for the QAD Exodus. I have taken almost everything that I've ever shot with that broadhead. And I feel so confident in them going from my field point to them. They shoot exactly like my field point. But what I like about them is how they, are you familiar with them? How the shaft of the arrow kind of sits up inside them. So
Yes.
the ferrule is really short. And so just from owning an archery store for a long time, what I noticed over the years with people shooting all different broadheads was, when you get something with a real long ferrule on it, you tend to have some drift, some planing at some of your longer yardages, and when you get something that's short like that, Exodus, you don't have that. It just flies real true, like my field point. Those are a thicker than normal blade on them. They're just a little bit thicker, and so a lot of blades are like the .029. There's like the .035. So when you get a little bit thicker blade and you do hit bone, there's less of a chance of you chipping the blade. So just for example, when I took my brown bear, I did a quartering away shot. It goes through, it comes out through the shoulder, it busts the shoulder bone, goes all the way through. Now, mind you, I've got a 25-inch draw. I was shooting 52 pounds at that time. To bust all the way through a brown bear shoulder, come out the other side, and the blade wasn't even chipped. And it double lunged him. And I just, you see that on a hunt, and why would you put another broadhead on your arrow after that? I just am just a firm believer. And just time and time again, when I have taken big animals, like a kudu is thick, a big, thick, heavy animal, or a zebra with that thick hide, and you punch through it with one of those things, and it's a one-shot kill, and you just over and over. I love that broadhead. It's my favorite. I don't know how you'd get me to shoot anything else at this point.
Very good. So we got into your bows and your camouflage. What tree stand do you prefer? A hang-on, climber, ladder, or ground blind?
So I would rather spot and stalk all day long, any day. I get fidgety and antsy as hell in a tree stand or a blind. That being said, I am a big weenie for heights. So ladder stand, and if that sucker's double wide, even better. I hate heights. I hate being up there. I get nervous. I don't like it at all. So I'm a big wussy about that.
I feel you. I'm not a fan of heights myself. It's definitely it makes things different when you're up in the air and you don't like it. It makes your hunt. You're nervous from being in a tree stand, let alone when the animal comes in. But
I think too. I probably if I'd grown up in the Midwest or something where you're in a tree stand all the time, I would be used to it. But if you're not hunting moose out of a tree stand, or you're not hunting caribou out of a tree stand. I don't know. It's not as common here. You do hunt black bear out of a tree stand a lot of times here, but it's not as common, I think, as it is for folks that maybe, grew up hunting deer and stuff. So it's something that I'm not as used to. And certainly if I did it more, I'd probably get a little more comfortable with it, but it's just not as familiar to me.
Yeah, definitely different in different areas in Alaska. It's not a tree stand state, really.
Yeah, we didn't sell tree stands at our store. And like I said, we were a big store, but we didn't sell them there. They do sell them at some of the big sporting goods stores here, but it's just not as common. You're not hunting sheep out of it or goat out of it or whatever. So you don't use them as much here.
Right. How many different species are in Alaska?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to name them. I don't know the count, but there's a lot of options to hunt here. A lot of things you got to draw a tag for, but there's a lot of options up here. And certainly, you have an advantage as an Alaskan because for a non-resident to come up here and hunt a lot of these species is insanely expensive. There are certain species that you have to be with a guide for. Like doll sheep and brown bear, and you're going to pay a lot to come up as a non-resident where, I can draw a tag and go out and hunt on my own for those things.
Gotcha. So you can self-hunt without a guide if you're a resident.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. We covered you and got into your gear and techniques, and I'm going to touch base on a little bit about your dad and kind of, can you take us down that road, how your dad got started and where he, once he got established, went?
Yeah. So he's my total hero. It was totally just devastated me when I lost him last year. So um, I really, really just looked up to everything that he did and his outlook on hunting and everything. But he started off, he was from Colorado. He moved to Montana and did a lot of hunting there. And he wanted to hunt in Alaska. And he told my mom, if we move up there, we'll only stay until I'm done hunting. So she always laughs about that because, he got her up here and they never left. And she would bring it up from time to time and he would say, well, I'm not done hunting, but they never left. So, and he just loved it here and he loved hunting here. And he started off, he was a teacher and, he taught shop at the high school and he was a wrestling coach. And on the weekends, he started doing a little bit of guiding and he ended up getting his guide's license and then retiring from teaching and going full blown into guiding. But he got license number 35 in the state of Alaska. So he was only the 35th guide license ever to be issued in the state of Alaska, which I think is pretty neat. And he actually ended up helping write the guide test that they use still today for guides to get their license, which I also thought was pretty neat. But he guided in the Wrangell Mountains for quite a long time for Dall sheep, and then the feds came in and took a bunch of that land and made it so that you can't hunt in a lot of areas in the Wrangells. And so he ended up moving down to the Alaska Peninsula and he bought a lodge down there. And down there is really known for the brown bears, but caribou and moose hunting too. And so he was taking, his clients were taking some really big brown bears off the Alaska Peninsula. They're not quite as big as Kodiak, but you can definitely get some, 10 and 11 foot brown bears down there. And he ran that operation for a long time. So he's a hunting guide over 40 years here. And he was honored as with the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Alaska Professional Hunters Association here, which is their guide operation here. He got their Lifetime Achievement Award. And he also got the Safari Club International Professional Hunter of the Year Award at the National Convention as well. He was honored there, and he was really well known for being a very, very ethical guide. He was amazing bush pilot, really, really talented bush pilot. Flying on the Alaska Peninsula is no joke. I mean, the winds down there are crazy, and I don't know if you're familiar with the terrain, but there's no trees down there. There's nothing blocking the wind. It's just tundra. And the winds whip through there horrific. And if you can fly down there, you can pretty much fly, anywhere. And he was a really great bush pilot. I remember when I was a kid, a couple of times they called him for search and rescue stuff where their pilots couldn't get in to save people that were in bad situations. And he went out, even landed on a sandbar one time to save some people. So he did some pretty neat stuff. With his planes, he really flew that Super Club like it was a extension of himself. And then after he sold the lodge, he started to get ill. Not too long after that, he did some personal, hunting for himself as well. He was an avid hunter himself, and he hunted a lot of stuff. Like when he was younger, he took everything you could think of with that recurve bow. Like, it just amazes me that he could get close enough to take a Dall sheep with a recurve and a black bear and multiple caribou and moose and goat and, all these different species that he took with his recurve. As he got older, he would switch off to his gun, and he eventually ended up taking a world slam of sheep, which is 12 species of sheep. But he actually took 24 total sheep, because many sheep he took multiples of, like 7 Dall sheep and 2 stone sheep. And it was different back then. It wasn't a $40,000-$50,000 hunt. He actually, like, for example, he flew his own bush plane into Canada and hunted over in Canada for stone sheep. Like, you can't do that stuff anymore. So it's kind of it was a different world back then. Sheep hunting was just, everything to him. He sat on the national board of directors for Foundation North American Wild Sheep, and he was the 98th member ever for that foundation, which I thought was neat. They did a memorial to him last year, and they actually looked that up and contacted me and told me that. And he was at the very first meeting that they ever had, and helped them kind of establish that organization as well. So I thought that was kind of cool too. I could go on and on about him. I just look up to him so much, all the things that he did. And I have tons of amazing stories of how he helped others, how he helped other guides get on their feet. I mean, he took so many young guides under his wing and taught them and helped finance them so they could get their own areas. He really did some pretty amazing things for the hunting community here in Alaska and nationally.
One hell of a guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Just listening to your energy, talk about him, you can just tell that there was a love and a trust, and you looked up to him like no other. And that's amazing, Johnny, for, kind of opening up and run us through where he had gone and had been and where he brought himself to. And wow, that's all. Wow is all I can say to that. That's amazing.
I think he came from a family with a ton of kids in it. They were dirt poor. They were lucky if they got an orange for Christmas, and most Christmases they didn't get anything. And living on this little tiny farm in Colorado, and he really showed that if you have a dream and something you want to do and accomplish in your life, that you can do it. You can set out and you can set your mind and do it. And I always keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's words to live by. No doubt about it. Put your mind to something and you can accomplish a lot of things. And wow, just amazing. It almost, one of them where we wish we could talk to your dad today, just by listening to you, that he was, just a great gentleman and somebody that cared about conservation and cared about wildlife and everything that the Big Buck Registry represents. And wow, just amazing. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Jay, you want to get into taking Johnny on a memorable hunt?
Yeah, or maybe Johnny can take us on a memorable hunt. Even better.
Wow.
I see so much of your dad and you after you described him. Like, you're definitely kin. There's no question about that.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's very cool. So on the show, obviously, we like to have somebody tell us a really good deer story. And you've been on so many other hunts other than deer hunts. I think we should probably explore something different that you've been on. And we just give us some details. Slow it down, play by play, so it's like we're there with you. Where are we going to go on this? Where are we going to go with you?
I don't know. Well, since actually after what you just said, maybe I'll tell you my alligator hunt story, because there's something right at the end of that hunt that kind of ties into what you just said about my dad. So
okay.
Maybe I'll tell
you
about my alligator.
Definitely.
So I don't know exactly how I got it in my head that I really, and this was before my illness, so this was a little bit ago, but
okay.
I got it in my head that I wanted to shoot an alligator with my bow, and that I wanted to do it spot and stock. So what's unusual about that is most folks do it out of a boat. I wanted to do it on land, spot and stock, and I had trouble even finding anybody that wanted to take me to do that, because it's just not that common.
Right.
And then I convinced one of my girlfriends to come along with me, and she was going to shoot one, out of a boat, and while we were there, and I think I permanently scarred her for life after this experience, because she was just, she said she never felt such full terror in her life, but she was a trooper and she stayed by my side. Went down to Florida, and we, you'd start talking to the guides and stuff down there, and we had to, switch out our arrows, and had to be an 850 grain arrow with this 250 grain broadhead on it, and the gator broadheads are not like a normal broadhead. They don't just go in. They, they have little blades that come out, so they can't come back out once they go
Gotcha,
in, which
okay.
would be, barbed, like more than barbed, almost like a grappling hook in a way, but
Right.
something that wouldn't be legal, in Alaska. But
Sure.
so we get this full setup and, kind of get sighted in with that and realize, if I'm going to penetrate this alligator, I got to be like 15 yards or less, basically,
Right.
At this point, like with this heavy arrow and my pound at that point, I think I was shooting 54, 56 pounds. So,
Okay.
I'm going to have to be really close to get this thing. And, so we tried a few different methods. This went on for several days. We tried, stalking in on them, and we would spook them and they would flip down in the water, or we would sit and call, which is really rather intimidating, because you get down in the swamp and you're calling, and they use a baby gator distress call because the males eat the babies,
Right.
and so they're doing a baby gator distress call, and you see, well, here's one coming up the waterway on the left, but also here's one coming up the waterway on the right at the same time. And they're both beelining for you, and you see their little eyes peeking out. And you're like, holy shit, what if these both get here at the same time? Like, how is this exactly going to go down for us? You know, and you get pretty nervous about it. And, stocks would get blown, or they'd get spooked, or they wouldn't come all the way in, or they'd come in and they wouldn't get all the way to the shore, and we'd realize maybe they weren't, that big. And, kind of go through a few days of it. And about the fourth day, we're kind of out on this peninsula, and it's me and Jamie and the guide out there. And, first we're kind of almost crawling through the weeds to get down onto it. And Jamie's already fairly freaked out, because we don't really have spiders per se in Alaska. Like, we got some daddy long legs. There's nothing big up here. There's nothing that can bite you or whatever. And,
right.
And they got like these friggin' banana spiders that are like, the size of your hand.
Yeah. Well, it's
like
opposite
like
climates,
terrified.
right? Completely
right.
opposite
So,
climates.
We're Alaskan girls, like, we're like, shit, we're just freaking out there, and they're in the grasses, so you're crawling in between them, which is fairly freaky. And then I'm crawling along, and I see this snake, right there on my right hand side as I'm crawling. And so I kind of motioned to her, because she's behind me crawling, and she's like, oh my God, we're quiet, and we go through, and we kind of get down in the bushes, and I whisper to the guide, hey, there's a snake over there, like 10 feet away. He's like, oh, I'm sure it's fine, no big deal. And then like a couple minutes go by, and he goes, what'd it look like? And I kind of describe it to him, and he gets this weird look on his face. So he like crawls over, and then he crawls back, and he goes, that's poisonous, don't go over there. And we look at each other like, what the hell are you talking about? Don't go over there. It's like 10 feet away. It can just slither over here at any moment.
Right.
Like, we're down in the weeds. The weeds are over our heads. So right then, I knew I'd already lost Jamie at that point. She's like done. She's like ready to get out of there. So we're laying down in the weeds, and he starts calling, and, we can see to the left a gator's coming. We can see kind of straight out a gator's coming. We can see on the right a gator's coming. Like, holy, there's 3 of them out there coming towards us, and you can kind of see the little trail in the water as they're coming at you. And we get kind of focused on this one that's coming in from the left. It's coming in the fastest, and the weeds are tall. We're kneeling down, but they're over our heads, and we're kind of trying to peek through, and it's getting pretty close to the shore. And Jamie's like behind us, and she keeps tapping him. Hey, there's something over here. She's pointing behind her on the right. And he's like, no, there's nothing over there. There's nothing over there. She's like, yeah, there's something over there. There's something over there. And he's like, shut up. Like, stop. Like, there's nothing over there. And then all of a sudden, there is this, she goes, there's a paw. Like, I think it should have been claw, but she called it a paw. But, right. And we look, and there's like, you can see his claw, like right there, like feet away from us. And all of a sudden, there's this big splash, and this gator jumps in the water. It had been just a few feet away from us on our right-hand side, had snuck in on us. He splashes and goes in, and the guide goes, that was like a 12-foot gator. And we're thinking, you got to be freaking kidding me. Like, first of all, they can jump. They can launch and jump. So I'm thinking that could have jumped on us at any time. None of us even knew it was there. So we're just rattled. So she's like, oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. And she starts standing up. By this time, the one on the left is all the way up to the shore. So it's now only maybe 5-6 feet away from us. So I don't want that thing thinking we're a little tasty morsel in the bushes there and then jumping at us. So I grab a hold of the back of her belt loop on her pants and I'm like, sit down. I'm like pulling her down. And she's like almost hyperventilating. Like she wants out of there. She's done with it. Yeah. And the guide's like, oh, it's too small. It's only like 7 or 8 feet. And he's like, shoot it right in the front of its head. Like, what? Why? Why would I do that? Just shoot it in its head. It'll bounce right off. So I'm like, okay. So I stand up, I shoot it. I shoot with my arrow and it literally hits it in the head. And that 850 grain arrow with that 250 grain broadhead hits it in its head and it bounces off like rubber, just boom, doesn't even penetrate. It just bounces off. The gator spins around and goes back in the water. Oh, Jamie jumps up and just runs right up the bank, like all the way up the bank. And I'm like, what the hell was that? And he's like laughing, it was funny. It scared it off. It was too small. And I'm thinking, dude, what are you doing? Like, she's terrified, So I run back up the bank and she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. She's like, I love you. You're my friend. I came here to support you. Like, our lives are in danger. Like, I'm done. And I'm thinking, she's a freaking trooper, like, this wasn't her thing. This was my bucket list, not her bucket list. And she's doing her best to be there for me. Kind of calm her down, had a little vodka that night, chatted it out. And then, next morning we get up and she's like, I'm going to run the video camera. We had brought a video camera, but I film stuff, but I never do anything with it. I just have a bunch of videos of a bunch of my hunts, but it's just for me. So I'm like, all right, yeah, film it. That'd be cool. So she's like, I'm going to stay way up on the ridge up here above y'all, and I'm going to film, while you guys hunt. Okay, that's perfect. So next day we see this big gator, and he's like sunning himself on the side of this lake. And so we go way up around him. We come down above him, and we're sneaking down. Again, really high weeds all around us. We're crouched down. We're sneaking in, down there. She's filming us. And we get almost to him, and he spooks, and he jumps in the water. And I'm like, shit, not again. But this guy was like, he was ready to go for it. So he spins around, and he comes back up. Now he's kind of got his face back up on the land, and he's looking up at us, and we're hunched down in the weeds. And the guide's like, I think he thinks you might be something, you're about his size, I think, like he thinks maybe I might be a little tasty morsel for him. So I'm like, well, maybe I can use that to my advantage, to get him up there. Yeah. So I thought this is going to be my opportunity. And so the guide stayed where he was, and I just felt really, really calm, like really good. I just started going, all crouched down, and I just started going down through the weeds and staying low, and he's coming and I'm coming, and we're going to meet in the middle basically. And he just kept coming up on land, and Jamie's, filming the whole thing. Well, I guess she thought because the weeds were so high, she didn't know that I knew he was coming. Gotcha. She thought I could only see that I was stalking down in on him. So the video is like the funniest ever, because on the video, she starts having like a panic attack, and she decides she's going to run down the hill, I guess, to save me, or I don't know what she was doing. She was a long ways away. So what could have been a really great video of this hunt is the weeds and the camera whipping in all directions, her hyperventilating saying, he's going to eat you. Oh my God, he's going to eat you. Oh my God. And her panicking and running down this grassy hill. I'm like, you're the worst cameraman ever. But so I stalk down, I get stalked down on him, and he's coming up, and he's pushed up. When they walk and they push and their chin is up, which exposes that nice soft belly on the underside. So instead of having to shoot him in that soft spot in the back of the head, I can plunk it right in that nice soft area underneath. So I pop up, I draw as I'm coming, as I'm standing. So I'm at full draw by the time I stand up. Well, he's at 6 yards. He's right in front of me. So I just pop him right in the chest. And as soon as that arrow hits him, he takes off, which is normal. They feel safest in the water. So he spins around and runs to go back into the water. Well, the line comes off my bow, and then there's a buoy that's supposed to pop off the end. Yep. Well, it jammed on the end. And so I had my hand up in a wrist sling, because I always shoot with a wrist sling. Right. Well, the force of that gator taking off and that rope getting tight, I couldn't get my hand out of the wrist sling. So he runs for the water, and I'm dragging behind him. So he's dragging me. So I got a wounded gator on a rope attached to my bow, of which I can't get my hand out of, and it's dragging me to the water. And the guide takes off running after me, and he actually ran all the way up and pulled on the line, got my arm released, and then he ran with my bow all the way out to his thighs before he snapped the end of that stabilizer piece off and broke it.
Wow.
To get it off of my bow. And I'm laying there like, what the frick just happened to me? Like, oh my God, like so freaking scary and so much energy. And then
wow.
I stand up. The guide comes walking up out of the water. He's shaking. He's like, what the frick just happened? And we grab a hold of each other and we're hugging. And then Jamie pops the camera up, and on the video it goes, oh, yay. And that's the only part of the whole video that she got was us hugging. And I'm like, we watched it that night, and I'm like, you're the worst cameraman ever. That could have been the coolest video.
Wow.
But instead it's her having a panic attack in the grass and then us hugging. So then, so by then I'm like, wow, like that was insane. So he's out in the lake and you can see the buoy. So we had to go around, get an airboat, launch it into the lake, and then go out and grab the buoy rope and pull. Well, he's like death rolling in the rope. And we had to pull him up to the surface. And then I drew and shot another arrow into him. And then we pull him up on the side, and I just sliced through. He was dead, but you don't bring him in without doing this. I just sliced through the bloodline in the back of his head, and then we pulled him into the boat. But that was honestly that whole week, really, the tensions of leading up to it and the close calls. And then that was the scariest hunt that I've ever been on. I mean, the most adrenaline filled, craziest thing that I've ever done, crazier than shooting a brown bear with your bow. That hunt will always, I hope that I never have anything crazier than that. I mean, it really was the most terrifying thing that I've ever been through. And, but I did it. And I got my gator, and I mounted him like a rug. He's 11 foot long all the way across my wall. And there's probably not a lot of people in Alaska that have gators on their wall.
Wow. So. What a story. Yeah. Crazy good story.
Probably like one of the top 2 best stories I've ever heard.
Right.
Johnny, tell one hell of a story.
And here's the crazy part. Now I want to do it. It's phenomenal. Great story.
Thanks.
All right. Let's move on to the 10 rapid fire questions. I'll let Dusty load them up here and fire away.
All right, I'm nervous.
Johnny, we haven't prepped you for these, and you haven't heard them, have you?
No.
Very good. Your number 1 best hunting tip.
These are supposed to be rapid fire. My number 1 best hunting tip. Always make an ethical shot and you should always think about the animal first before yourself. If it's not ethical and it's not going to be a one-shot kill, you shouldn't be doing it.
Very good. One thing that you cannot hunt without other than a firearm or a bow.
Chapstick. I'm addicted to chapstick.
What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
Oh, whistling. I cannot stand when someone whistles. Or does it have to be hunting related?
That's very good whistling. That's a first.
Yeah, that's a first.
Johnny, at the young age of 25 that you're at now, what would you tell your 18-year-old self, knowing what you know today?
Oh, gosh. Just not to take yourself too seriously, I think, or not to let yourself get too bent up on stuff that's important to you that you think is the end of the world when you're 18. When you're older, just is laughable. Right.
You meet a stranger in a hotel lobby or at a convention. They ask, what do you do for a living? What do you say?
I would say that I own a women's lifestyle clothing line that's inspired by the outdoors.
What did you have for breakfast?
Grits.
Grits in Alaska? No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You get your own billboard on the side of the highway, a blank canvas. What would it say?
Oh, gosh. Be kind. I think, I don't know, I think in general that people tend to forget to just treat each other with kindness. You just never know what's going on with somebody or what they're going through, and don't assume the worst about them. Just be kind.
I say the word successful. Who's the first person that pops in your mind and why?
My parents, I guess. I just look up to both of them, and I think that they are the epitome of starting from nothing and making a good life for themselves. I'm not sure that, to me, successful is money, but it's it's a family, it's love, it's doing good for others, and having a purpose and a meaning to your life.
Very good. What's a day in your life look like?
Well, I guess it depends on the day, but a business day for me would be, responding to customer emails, doing some social media stuff, I'm constantly designing. I'm the only designer for my clothing line, so I'm constantly designing new stuff. So working on designs, getting orders prepped, sending out orders, but from a non-business standpoint, spending some good quality time with my bulldog, who's my best friend, and depending on the time of the year, maybe riding my Harley. I don't know.
Nice. What's a hunting day in your life look like?
Well, hopefully successful. No, it depends where I'm hunting at, I guess, but hopefully off the grid somewhere in a camp with good friends, and whether I'm hunting or I'm just there to support somebody else, just making good memories with people that I care about.
Very good. Well, that wraps up the 10 rapid fire questions.
Well done, Johnny. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Those are hard.
I want to get into real quick, Jay, before we wrap things up, to talk a little bit about Rock Scarlet Outdoors. Johnny, tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, so it's Rock Starlet Outdoors, and it's a clothing brand. I initially started it. It was Rock Starlet Bow Hunting when I owned the archery store, and it was a women's clothing line that was archery and bow hunting based, lifestyle clothing, not outerwear clothing. It's just fun, hunting themed clothing that you would wear in your daily life that represents your passions. And after I sold the archery store, I expanded it into Rock Starlet Outdoors. So I really could include women that gun hunt and fish and camp and hike and bike and motocross and, all kinds of other things like that. And it's really two facets. One is the clothing brand and the team of really incredible women that I've put together from all over the country. And it's all about empowering women and encouraging them in the outdoors, but also just that idea of kindness. There's a lot of negativity and nasty stuff on the internet that I don't care for, and I don't care for the competitive nature of women in the outdoors on social media. This is a group of women that believe in my philosophies, which are being kind, supporting others, and being encouraging and inspiring. And everybody started somewhere. So a lot of people are new, and they need somebody that hasn't done these activities, that needs some advice, of just helping other people. And I design clothes that are fun, that have shotgun shells and arrows and deer heads, and say things like provider and encourage, inspire, empower, which is our company motto. But they're clothes that women would wear in their daily life that represent their passion for the outdoors. They're not necessarily outdoor clothing. They're day wear, but it's things that make you proud of being an outdoors woman.
Very good. Where can we find more about Rock Scarlet Outdoors?
So we have a Facebook and an Instagram, and then we have a website, which is rockstarletoutdoors.com, which is where we have all the clothing online there. And I also, a couple times a year, I put together groups to go and do hunts together, and camps and fishing trips and things like that. And I always go along, and if women are nervous, I'll sit with them. I'll not do my hunt. And I've taken groups of women to Africa, and I've sat with women in the blind that were nervous and coached them. I've done that a couple different times. I've taken groups on bear hunts, turkey hunts. We've done fishing trips. We've done big camping, four-wheeling adventures, and just trying to get groups of women together to do those adventures together is also, it's something that's important to me. And I think when you become an experienced outdoors woman, I think you owe it to other ladies to reach back and give them a hand and help them to get that experience too. So it's kind of, there's both of those facets to the business, but it's rockstarletoutdoors.com is where all of our stuff's online there.
Very good.
Very good. Very good. I'm so glad that we put this together. This has been one of
I
the
really
most
appreciate it.
entertaining hour and 18 minutes I think I've had in my entire life.
It's been fun.
It's been a lot of
I
fun.
didn't know if I had any stories to tell or anything to say, but I guess I did.
I think you did. Yeah, I think you told some really, and I think you have more to tell. That's the kicker part. But no, this has been great. I really enjoyed talking to you, Joni, and I think you're an inspiration, and I love that you're just as inspired to be outside every day as anybody I ever met, and that you're making changes in your life to make sure that still happens, despite some of the setbacks that you've had with your illness. So just keep doing it. I love your passion.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Very good. And if we had more questions, or if listeners are listening to this, where should we go to reach out to you?
So I have my own, besides my business one, I have my own Instagram. So it's RBGRRRL, RB Girl. So it was when I had Rock Starlet Bow Hunting. So girl, like growl girl, I guess.
Right.
But, and then I have a Facebook, which is Joni Marie Bow Hunting. So those are places that people can always contact me. And I try to post, I hope I post things that are real on there. I try to post about some of my struggles and stuff sometimes. And I like connecting with other people that are also going through an illness or a disability or whatever, and they're still getting out and getting outdoors. I think we can inspire each other. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of people reach out to me through social media, and are just so many incredible people that inspire me to keep doing it too. And so I love connecting with people on there. So I'd love for people to reach out to me there.
Awesome. Very good. Well, I appreciate you stepping into Big Buck Studios here and spending an hour or so with us, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Joni for coming on the show and stepping into the studios and giving us an explanation as to this rare disease that she has and how she's dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, so that she can still continue to enjoy her lifestyle of hunting and being outside. I don't know what I'd do if I was told I only had 2 years to live, but I think it's probably going to look something like what Joni did in this scenario. We definitely wish Joni the best of luck, and hopefully we'll check in with her now and then to see where she's at, and hopefully her move to Arizona will help fix some of those situations that she has when she challenges the element and exposure to the cold. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week?
Yeah, Jay, I've got a tip of the week this week.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
It's the end of season. All the hunting activities settling down. Turkey season's coming, but you got to also be a conservationist on your tree stands. And if you got ladder stands that are up in the trees, we got an 8-month period here that the stand's going to be sitting there dormant if you leave them out. And be courteous to the tree. Go out and loosen up your straps and give them that room to make that 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch of growth without embedding your stand into the bark and doing damage and possibly killing the tree. So if you got a minute, you and your buddies go out, hit the woods, and just take and climb up in your ladder stands and release your ratchet. Just give it that room to grow and think about the tree advancing to a bigger size before next season starts. And it just it's easier on your gear and it's easier on the tree. Keep that in mind.
Right. That's good. That's a good tip. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and Blueberry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.